Imagine carrying a hidden monument for 12 years, not of stone, but of your own body's bewildering rebellion. A mass the size of a basketball, suspended like a grotesque pendulum beneath your chin. This was Jennifer's reality. It wasn't just a physical burden. It was a shroud of shame, a barrier built from whispers and stares that stole her life, piece by piece. She became a prisoner within her own skin, until one desperate act of courage ignited a chain of events so astonishing it would rewrite medical textbooks and inspire thousands to finally lay down their own hidden weights. This is the story of the fossilized burden and the woman who dared to crack it open. Let us know where you are watching from and what time you found this video. The weight that Jennifer bore was not only physical, it was a sentence of 12 years that was carved in the form of looks, hidden laughter, and the harsh moniker, Pendulum Jen. The ugly anchor that was drawing her away from existence was a lump that was the size of a basketball and dangled under her chin. Mirrors become adversaries, and she shunned social events as if they were battlegrounds. Her world shrunk to the confines of the four walls, where pity and humiliation could not catch up with her. However, solitude is a root cause of its own despair. A flame kindled in Jennifer's tired eyes on a Tuesday that was particularly muggy. She hushed. "Enough!" And the word reverberated across the kitchen without any sound. "We're draining it, Mom!" Despite the fact that her hands had been shaking for years just combing her daughter's hair, Ilara, her mother, grimaced and nodded slightly. Word leaked out like smoke, as it often does in communities of a smaller size. A macabre crowd gathered against Jennifer's picket fence as the sun began to set. Neighbors driven by morbid curiosity, youngsters with wide-eyed expressions and a few features contorted with spiteful anticipation were among those who were there. On the inside, Jennifer leaned her head back and exposed the tense, veined skin of the huge bulge. This was done under the harsh light of a single lamp. In Ilara's hands, which had been calmed by a lifetime of love, was a needle that had been sterilized. As the needle made its way through the surface, a collective gasp could be heard coming from beyond the glass. There is no sound. And then, nothing. Not a single drop of fluid or a single burst of infection, just a resistance that is unpleasant and superficial. Only pressure, a peculiar and thick fullness, was what Jennifer experienced. The gathering was suddenly filled with confusion, and mumbling replaced the expectant stillness that had been there. It seemed as if the lump was making fun of them. Jennifer's recollection of the weather in the hospital halls was not accurate. When the scans were shown on the screen, the doctors, who had been first doubtful of another giant cyst claim, became pale. There were no fluids present in the bulk. There was a thick and heterogeneous shadow that was pushing dangerously on her carotid artery and jawbone. The structure of this shadow was unlike anything they had ever seen in their textbooks. It was urgent and necessary to do surgery. There was a palpable sense of anxiety in the operating room space. Jennifer was unable to hear the anesthesiologist's reassuring words because the rhythm of her own heart was keeping her from hearing them. One of the most experienced surgeons, Dr. Aris Thorne, who is renowned for his unflappable serenity, looked at his colleagues with a serious expression on his face. There was no yielding softness seen when the scalpel made contact with the flesh. Instead, it encountered opposition, a rough hitch in the road. In a methodical manner, layer by layer, they sliced into the flesh, which was not sick tissue, but rather a peculiar geological structure on the inside. What they discovered was incomprehensible to them. It was not pus or blood that made up the core. Rather, it was layers upon layers of calcified, hardened tissue, similar to sedimentary rock that had been compacted over ages. When they touched it with their gloved hands, it had a chilly, solid sensation, somewhat like pumice stone. The core bulk was buried like a fossil deep inside this ossified castle, and it was snuggled deep within the stronghold. Sleek, precisely round, and very sturdy all at the same time. Dr. Thorne proceeded to carefully remove it as his brow wrinkled in a deep sense of incredulity. The object was chilly, weighty, and unnervingly inactive. It was the size of a giant grapefruit, and it was resting on his hand. There were harsh and involuntary gasps that sliced through the air that was antiseptic. The nurses leaned in closer, and the surgeon who was aiding them mumbled, "What is that?" The devastating solution was delivered by pathology, yet it only served to compound the riddle. There was no evidence of cancer. It was not a typical cystis growth. An ossifying keratinolith with a central enameloid core was the disease in question. This ailment is so very uncommon that there have only ever been 3 reported examples of it, none of which were of this scale. In essence, Jennifer's body had started manufacturing keratin, the protein that is found in hair and nails, and calcium at an uncontrollable pace, layer upon layer, year after year, as a result of a strange developmental aberration that included trapped epithelial cells near a tiny salivary gland duct. What is the center sphere? Something that is completely strange to the soft tissues of the neck, a peculiar creation of hypermineralized tissue that gives the appearance of enamel and is nearly like a pearl. The lump was a self-created geological marvel, an accumulation of hardened keratin and calcium that had accumulated over a period of 12 years, gradually strangling her neck. The sheer weight and pressure of the lump distorted her jawline into the hideous appearance that the world encountered. Not only was it not expanding outward, but it was also contracting inside with unrelenting power. When Jennifer initially opened her eyes, her first conscious act was not to talk, but rather to touch. The smooth plane of her neck and the definite line of her jaw were traced by her shaking fingertips as they approached her. There is no weight. There is no horrible pendulum. It was not a cry of anguish that erupted from her throat. Rather, it was a cry of relief that was so tremendous that it could not be measured. They held a mirror in front of her, but she did not recognize the lady who was looking back at her. It was her face, despite the fact that it was thinner, older, and marked with lines of sorrow from the past. The truth is revealed, without any burdens. Not only did Jennifer's tale become widely known, but it also exploded. Various news organizations have referred to it as the stone necklace or the fossilized burden. The medical journals were in a frenzy to report the case, which was unusual. The true effect, however, was on people. In the past, Jennifer was a captive of her own body, but now she has emerged into the light. The guilt, the solitude, and the crushing weight of being regarded as a spectacle were all topics that she discussed with stunning candor via her words. The advice she conveyed was not only medical, rather, it was emotional. Do not conceal your difficulties. It is impossible to tell what huge weight could really be stone that is only waiting to be removed. Her viral appeal was heard all around the world. There were others emerging from the shadows, including a guy who was concealing a disfiguring vascular birthmark, a lady who was carrying a big lipoma on her back that had not been treated, and numerous more who were concealing ailments out of fear or embarrassment. A significant increase in consultations for long-ignored conditions was recorded by hospitals. Jennifer became an improbable beacon, demonstrating that the most horrific monsters we bear are not only metaphorical, but rather tangible burdens that may be lifted, so exposing the person who is trapped under them, waiting for the opportunity to finally breathe free. Her successes, each one a wordless symphony to emancipation, were the breeze on her neck, the unburdened tilt of her head, and the simple but significant act of seeing her own chin. These were her victories. After carrying a stone for 12 years, the lady ultimately decided to let go of her load, and in doing so, she assisted a great number of other people in finding the strength to remove their own burdens. One may say that rehabilitation was a cruel kind of grace. Jennifer had been adjusting for the enormous weight for a period of 12 years, which resulted in the muscles in her neck being atrophied and her posture becoming permanently stooped. When I was going through physical therapy, it seemed like I was learning to inhabit a new body. Performing seemingly little actions, such as rotating her head to look over her shoulder or tilting it back to feel the sun on her face, were exercises that were both excruciating and profoundly moving for her. With every twinge, a reminder of the load that had been removed, and with every degree of mobility that was returned, a quiet triumph. There was an overwhelming amount of the world outside the hospital. When Jennifer stepped out onto the sidewalk for the very first time, she prepared herself for the same looks that she had seen before, but they did not appear. People gave each other a quick glance before turning away. There was no trace of her. The unremarkable anonymity was a really exhilarating experience. It was not to determine whether or not the bulge was noticeable that she found herself loitering in store windows. Rather, it was simply to be amazed by the smooth column of her neck and the unbroken line of her jaw. The face that she saw in the mirror was clearly hers, despite the fact that it was older and had lines of stress that she had not seen previously. The truth is revealed, without any burdens. The news of the fossilized burden caused a big splash. At an international surgical conference, Dr. Eris Thorne revealed the astounding results, which included a smooth and weighty enameloid pearl that was shown under glass as if it were a geological relic. According to the findings of the pathologists, the majority of the structure was made up of brushite and whitlockite, which are minerals that are often seen in kidney stones or prehistoric bone pieces. These minerals were stacked with very thick keratin. Jenny, on the other hand, evolved into something more than a medical wonder. The sheer sensitivity that she displayed in interviews, in which she described the crushing weight of guilt, the solitude, the missed birthdays, and the averted thoughts, struck a chord with people all around the world. It seemed natural for the hashtag Unbury Your Burdens to eventually become popular. The issue was not limited to only physical abnormalities. The unseen stones that people carried were revealed by many who told their tales of concealed sadness, debilitating debt, violent relationships, and chronic ailments that they had previously discounted. There was a letter that received from a guy called David in Scotland that was really moving. Over the course of 20 years, he had concealed a serious psoriatic plaque that covered half of his scalp by using hats even throughout the summer period and avoiding intimate relationships. After seeing Jennifer's bravery, he made the decision to visit a dermatologist. "You showed me," he wrote in his journal, "that the weight of hiding was heavier than the thing itself." Following her exposure to Jennifer's narrative, a young lady in Mumbai disclosed that she had sought medical attention for a huge and disfiguring plexiform neurofibroma that was located on her face. Her post-operative photograph, in which she is shown carrying a placard that reads, "My burden is lighter," went viral. She did more than simply inspire. Jennifer also acted. She collaborated with organizations that advocate for patients, where she contributed her voice and the incredible narrative of her life to campaigns that advocate for early medical intervention and fight against the stigma that is associated with visible differences. Under her leadership, she established the Stone Foundation, a modest charitable organization that offers financial assistance to those who are seeking treatment for ailments that have been neglected for a long time and are physically difficult. On the other hand, the most meaningful moments were often the most silent. In the kitchen of her mother, Alara, Jennifer was standing there, assisting in the chopping of vegetables some months after the operation. A ray of sunshine from the afternoon came in through the window and warmed her neck as it passed through. While the knife hovered above her, she hesitated and closed her eyes. Experiencing the unconstrained and uncomplicated sense of warmth on flesh that had been protected for more than a decade brought up tears that were quiet and fresh. When Alara saw her daughter, she stretched out and gently touched her shoulder. The touch that she applied now only met her daughter's silky skin and powerful muscle. Jennifer said, "It's just the sun, Mom," with a gentle grin that made its way through her voice. Just the sun. Jennifer went to the tiny park that was close to her house on a brisk autumn morning. It was a spot that she hadn't been to in years, but she decided to go there. Sitting on a seat, she let the gentle air to gently caress her neck as it passed by. Nearby, a small girl about 5 years old who was pursuing a brilliant red ball came to a halt somewhere. With a glance that was not burdened by judgment, she stared at Jennifer with an inquisitive yet open expression. Jennifer posed a grin. In response, the young lady grinned, went and collected her ball, and then raced away laughing. No hushed noises. There are no looks, just the sound of the wind, the rustling of the leaves, and the deep, uncomplicated tranquility of being seen, while at the same time being invisible. Jennifer watched the clouds move over the broad, unburdened sky as she leaned her head back and felt the muscles in her neck and shoulders stretch out in a comfortable manner. The stone was no longer there. The light had finally come into her universe. A remote clinic in Peru sent an email to Dr. Thorne, who received it recently. There were scans attached that showed a fisherman who had a large growth on his shoulder that was rock hard and had been there for 8 years. Because of the fossilized burden case that was reported on in worldwide news, the local physicians assumed that the patient had a keratinolith that was comparable. They inquired about the suggestion. The scans were provided by Thorne, who did so with a mixture of gloomy pleasure and empathy. Although Jennifer's stone was no longer present, its reverberation was assisting others in achieving freedom, one seemingly insurmountable obstacle at a time. The weight that she bore had turned into a beacon, demonstrating that even the most peculiar and heavy loads may be lifted without difficulty.